Hello, I am Dr. Eileen Hale, the COO of our organization, TTELT, Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers, a project of educators worldwide. And I'd like to introduce a special guest with us today. Natasha Agrawal has been an English language teacher in the United States in New Jersey for over 15 years. So she's originally from New Delhi, India, and she has presented at numerous conferences nationally and internationally. As well, she was a fellow, English language fellow in Egypt and an English language specialist in Mexico. Today, Natasha is going to talk to us about using drama and role playing to teach reading. Thanks so much for joining us today, Natasha. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Hale. It's such a pleasure to be with you and to be chatting with you today.
Yes, it's really wonderful to have you. And thanks at the end of a long day of teaching for joining us. So could you just start by sharing how and why you got interested in this topic, specifically for helping English language learners with their reading skills?
Yes, so I just have to do a little, go back into my own background a little bit, because when I was growing up, I grew up in India and I grew up as a very shy child. And when I was an undergraduate, a friend introduced me to theater. And my first reaction was, I can't do it. I'm not like you. I can't stand on stage and even speak a single word. And she said, oh, of course not. No, anybody can do it. And I was like, no, only you say that. I cannot do it. However, she introduced me to the director. He gave me a little role in a play, and voila, before I knew it, I was on stage and I had to memorize all these dialogues. And the strange thing was, I had so much fun doing that, and my confidence grew so much. And then I did a few more plays, and then I realized this is something I really enjoy, and it really changed my personality. So just knowing that and having that personal experience myself, my first thing is to just push my shy students and say, go stand on stage, because it's just going to turn your life around. And I do that as much as I can with my students. And I do see a difference. And the thing is, they enjoy it so much. And there's so much teamwork that comes from it. So they learn to collaborate, they learn to speak, they learn to listen. And of course, they have a script in front of them, so they have to read. There's no getting out of that, but they enjoy doing it. And that's where it comes from. And I've done it with all kinds of age groups. My youngest kids are about 6 or 7 years old. They love it. My oldest kids, well, I don't call them kids, but I've taught adults as well. And they have enjoyed it as well. So I just feel it's a great motivator. And anything that brings energy into the classroom, I love doing things like that. So
that's wonderful.
Where it comes from.
Thank you for that background. That's helpful information. So can you give us an example, like how do you actualize it in practice? Do you have a reading you take from a text that you're using, or where do you start from to integrate the reading with the drama conceptually? And then how do you, like I said, actualize it?
Yes. So I try to keep things very simple in life and in the classroom. And especially when you're working with young children, you want to keep things very simple because it can go out of hand very quickly. You need to have good management skills for that. So I do, where I start from is I take a text that they are reading. So it could be a book they have read. And just to give an example, it could be a folk tale like Three Little Pigs or The Red Riding Hood, or right now I'm teaching 5th grade, and we are doing the Dred Scott case, which was a historic case about slavery, and we're learning about the US Constitution. So learning about the Constitution and slavery, these are heavy topics. But what I did was I took that story, and of course it's nonfiction, and I created a dialogue for Dred Scott. I created dialogue for his wife, for the judge, and all the other people who show up in our text. And the students are just like, oh, I want to be Dred Scott. I want to be the wife. I want to play the judge, So it's just, instead of having to read a book, which sometimes they cannot connect with, here's a play and they're like, yeah, I want to read this. So we did that just today. And what I do is if there are particular vocabulary words which they are finding hard, and in this case, like the US Supreme Court, Supreme, the word itself is a little hard to read because of the spelling. So I make sure that it occurs a few different times. I make sure that Dred Scott says it himself, that his wife says it again, that the narrator says it one more time. So it's repeated, and repetition helps a lot with language learners. So simple things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And how do you make sure everyone has a chance to read?
Yes, so once a script is ready, and I always ask for student input, I ask them, what do you think this character would have said at this point? If he's going to the US Supreme Court, how do you think he's feeling? And I try to get as much input from the students as possible. And once the script is ready, if I have a small group of students, I make sure that everybody reads different characters. We read it more than once, maybe 2 times, 3 times, but every time we do a reading, a different student reads a different character. So for example, if you read Dred Scott the first time, the next time you're going to be reading the judge, the third time you're going to be reading the narrator, so that, you're not just reading your own lines, but you're reading all of them. And then at the end of the third or fourth reading, then we sort of decide who's going to play which character. And then we try to rehearse and then do a small presentation just in the classroom. It depends on your situation, if you have a stage or not. I prefer to do things small and simple, so I keep it in the classroom.
That's wonderful. And if you don't have a specific script, how do you create the script from, let's say you're working with high school age kids or young adults, an adult education program? Where would you recommend? I mean, I know it's kind of easier in some ways to have children's stories like the ones you mentioned, but if you don't have those readily available, you have a specific text you have to use, how do you integrate all of a sudden, turn it into a drama for those that have specific curriculum that they're required to use? You know what I mean?
Well, one thing is to ask for student input. The more students are involved in it, the easier it becomes, because then they have the buy-in that, okay, I created something, I provided these words. But really, it's not that hard to take a fiction or even a nonfiction book and create it. It's just a matter of making sure that everybody has some dialogue that they want to say. Everybody gets a chance to speak, and making sure that everybody in the group gets kind of equity in dialogue. So there isn't one person who says a lot and then stands back, and other people, just so that, and you can add and subtract, give some people more lines, give some people less lines. You can be in charge of that as the teacher. And I think if you get used to doing it, it's not that hard at all. It's actually fun and easy to do.
Yeah. So you elicit the script from the students. It's not necessarily a pre-scripted script. In other words, you draw the script from the reading. Or you
yes, sometimes the pre-scripted ones are harder to use because I don't know, somehow I don't enjoy them as much. I guess I don't have as much buy-in.
Right.
Create something yourself. It's a lot more fun.
So you provide the scenario, if you will, whether you're reading like a history passage from a textbook in high school history class.
Yeah.
And turn it into a drama script and have them create the script for the characters.
Absolutely. And even if you don't create a script as such, say you don't have that much time, you just, pick up the scenario and say, how do you think this character is feeling? How do you think this character is feeling? Maybe if it's 4 or 5 characters. And then say, so if you're feeling sad or if you're feeling frustrated, how would the word sound? How would it come out? And let the kids show you, because they're really good at that kind of thing. They will do it, but just make it a place where they're able to express themselves and, encourage them as much as you can.
That's great. And so for an example, do you have like 4 to 5 to 6 students in a group and put them there? Let's just say 5 students in a group, and you're putting them in 5 groups within your classroom. So they're all actualizing the same script, or do they have the chance to write different scripts for the same content? You know what I mean?
Yes. So it can be either way. Say if I create it and I could give everybody a copy and say, make changes as required. Like if there's a word you don't understand, see if you can use a different word for it. I can do that, level the script, or they can all do the same script. And so if you have, say, 25 students and you have 5 groups of 5, then everybody can be working in a group and working together. Yeah, and it can be quite a lot of fun, except it can go out of hand very quickly. So management skills, rules have to be laid down before you start anything.
I can imagine. Yes, especially with younger children too.
Yes.
That's great. And then they present for each other in the classroom at the
Yes.
end.
Yes. Although I've had bigger productions as well, which we do in the auditorium, on the stage, and then we've even done sets and costumes. So if you want to go to that level, and if you have the time and resources to do that, do it. But pretend play is always fun,
Yeah.
Yeah. And keeping it simple, like just using paper, like when we've done fairy tales, say with younger kids, 2nd grade, I just would take a strip of paper, put it on the head and just write Cinderella. No costumes, no makeup, nothing, because that becomes, another layer of complication and excitement. And again, it's something you have to have lots of rules for. So
Yeah.
even a little sticker, or if we did something like the ant and the grasshopper, then I had the ant get a red t-shirt. Okay, you're the red ant, the grasshopper gets a green t-shirt, you're the grasshopper, again, keeping it simple. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And can you tell us just how the success has been for you in your classrooms? And like you said, it really motivates your students. You want to just share some anecdotes?
Yes. And so when my kids come to see me, because I have elementary school students, and they grow up, go to middle school, high school, and often they'll come back either to meet a teacher or to pick up a younger sibling, and they say, you know what I remember about being in your class? When I dressed up as Cinderella, or when I dressed up as the grasshopper, or remember when we did Pocahontas and I had a feather in my, that's the high point of their memory. So it's nice that they remember that.
Yeah, that's wonderful to be
Yeah.
remembered that way. Certain teachers always stick out in our memory, don't they? One way to really bring the class to life and motivate the students to engage.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, you feel like it really elicits their speaking skills and increases their desire to read even.
Yes, yes. And they have to listen as well, because we don't often emphasize listening as much, I feel, in the classroom. But here you have to listen to the earlier actor or the character before you say your own lines. So again, listening becomes much sharper because you're waiting to figure out when is my line coming up.
Right,
So,
that's a good point. Yeah, definitely. And then listening to each other, see how people perform it differently in the different groups, right? I imagine.
yes,
Fun.
and that creates teamwork as well, because some teams work better together, some don't, some fall apart because they're like, I don't want to work with this one or that one, or so that's a lesson in itself too, that kind of collaboration.
Right. And have fun, make the class and learning fun, right?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Natasha. So just a quick summary of Natasha's tips for us to use role play and drama in order to enhance reading in your classroom. She talked about keeping it simple, creating the script with student input, adding desired vocabulary more than once. Repetition helps a lot for reading, having students read the script several times, but changing roles. So all the students get the chance to read different lines of the script. Giving students each a chance to read the characters' lines, as I mentioned, ask how characters are feeling at different points of the story, demonstrate how voices can show emotion. Students can present the play in a classroom and or on a stage in the auditorium for the larger school body. And keeping the props and costumes simple. If you want to elaborate, you can add more, but make it easy and simple for everyone. Just most of all, so you have fun. Yes. Anything else you'd like to add, Natasha, as a closing summary for our teachers out there that might integrate this into their classroom?
Yes. So once I was doing a project on pollution, on plastic pollution in particular, and how, all those plastic bags are going into the ocean, and we were studying marine animals. And at that time, there was a lot of animals in the news because they had swallowed all these plastic bags, and they were pulling out whales like a couple of years ago. And we were studying this. We were, brainstorming ideas on how we could reduce this, how we can reduce plastic use, etc. And we were going to do a presentation for the parents, like a PowerPoint presentation. And one of the girls said, "Oh no, Miss A, why don't we just do a play?" And I said, "How are we going to do a play?" And she said, "Oh, we can write it." So really, they took the responsibility. One student became the whale. He stuffed a lot of plastic bags in his jacket. And then, he became the whale that was out of the ocean. Two children were playing on the beach. They saw this whale, and then they started to pull all these plastic bags out of his jacket, and so made the point, like, this is what's happening to the marine animals. And then the student who was the whale sort of sat up and said, "Please don't throw all these plastic bags. I swallow them because I think it's food." And, so it was very effective, much more effective than creating a PowerPoint and talking to the parents with that. So I just feel it's something that my students have gotten so used to that they're like, "Oh, can we just do this? Look, we know how to do this now." It's
That's wonderful that they adopted.
Yeah, I could just sit back and watch them, and they said, "Oh yeah, we can do this. Don't worry, we got this."
That's the ideal end of your teaching, right? When they take it on and have ownership for it themselves.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, not only for sharing your expertise, but sharing great anecdotes from your classroom. And I hope this will be useful for teachers globally that can integrate the drama into their classrooms to enhance their reading, listening, and writing skills, all of the above, right?
Really? Yeah, absolutely.
If anyone would like to follow up or get in touch with you, would you mind sharing your email or any other way to get in touch with you?
No, of course not. Should I? Okay, so my email is Natasha, Natasha, dot, my last name, Agrawal, Agrawal, and the number 9 at gmail.com. So natasha.agrawal9@gmail.com.
Great. Thank you so much, Natasha, for your time at the end of a long day. And I hope we appreciate you joining us today and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us.
Thank you. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
At either 8 a.m. or 12 noon UTC -5 time zone, we will be having our regular TTELT talks when we discuss education topics that are most important to you as teachers. So please register ahead of time. We're doing this 1 week early this month due to the Christmas holiday on December 25th in the United States. So again, this is Saturday, December 18th for TTELT Talks. And follow us on our website, ttelt.org, for prior and new upcoming podcasts, our Facebook TTELT group, Instagram at t.ttelt, and Twitter at TTELT1. Thanks for joining us today.